So to hook up the hob switch and add a second fuel pump, I need a fuel pump wiring kit. So this is the wiring diagram that came with the kit. It's actually pretty simple because this is already, like the way the kit comes, you have the relay with all the wires already attached. So the only thing that you have to figure out is where the wires go. So it tells you where all the wires go. So the orange one goes to the fuel pump positive. You're going to have the chassis ground. However, this chassis ground, instead of that being the chassis ground, that's going to be hooked up to the hob switch. Then the hob switch is going to have another wire that goes to the chassis ground, because the hob switch will make that ground connection when it reaches the PSI that the hob switch is set to. So mine's set to 15 PSI. So once the hob switch reaches 15, it completes the circuit from the wire going to the hob switch from the fuel pump to the ground of the chassis. It's just a chassis ground. And then this one is just going to go to your battery directly. I'm going to cut off some of this wire because there's a lot extra that I don't need. See, that's 10 feet. And then this one, the signal wire, I need to run my hob switch wiring all the way from the fuel pump all the way to the driver's side engine bay area. So the way I'm going to do that is I have a piece of welding wire here because I want to tuck it underneath here. I taped the wire to the welding wire. I'm just going to pull it through here. All right, now the wire's through here. Now I want to run the wire down to the ground, tie it, like zip tie it to the fuel lines and run it all the way across the engine bay. I got the wire ran all the way up to the top here. I try to run it in behind a couple things like that coolant line. I think that might be a brake line. Just to kind of keep it secure up against the wall. So it's got this as cushion right there. So trying to prevent it from getting frayed. These two need to connect here because that's the one for the hob switch. So I'm just going to go ahead and use my butt connectors to make that connection. So these wire splicers are excellent for this job. Zip tie this right here. Here's the hob switch. This is where I connected to fuel pump ground, and then the other part of the hob switch goes directly to this ground that's right here. So I just loosened that nut up and added a ground to what was already a factory ground. When this reaches 15 psi, this pushes something up to connect the circuit between these two wires. Here's a look under the car. One of the gray wires is the one running to the hob switch. The other gray wire, which I think is a wiring harness, yeah, it's a wiring harness, that runs to my ethanol content analyzer for my E85. So this gray wire right here, you can see how I ran it. That one goes to the hob switch. So I just try to zip tie it about every 6 inches to keep it from moving around a lot. You know, because if it starts banging up against stuff, it could start to eventually cut edges in it. So, you know, zip tied it to the fuel line. It's going through there. I was thinking about zip tying it in there just to keep it more secure. And then now I got to tighten it up as it goes back up to the top of the fuel tank. I've got it zip tied right there, so I can run straight across the top there and go to the fuel pump. These are all the wires that goes to the relay. So everything's already wired into the relay, and it's all color coded, and the diagram's there. So We just have to wire it in just as it says on the diagram, besides the hob switch part. Here's my fuel pump wiring where I wired up for the second pump. So here's the relay. I mounted it right there. Black wire is going to ground. There's a ground conveniently right there. The orange wire is the fuel pump power. The brown wire is the fuel pump signal for the key for when the switch is on. Here's the power wire to give the relay power. Runs all the way around. And I took a cutting tool and made it so it'll come right through here. I cut this black area, and I cut this red area so that it goes directly in there, and this still snaps in place. It goes right under that nut, so that's your power wire. The hob switch won't really have anything to do with the relay part, but I'll go around to the other area and show you what's going on over there. So I ran the wires back through here, zip tied them, and I cut that one. And I had to add a little bit extra wire to the brown wire to get the length I needed because it only ran to right here. So the orange wire is your fuel pump power. The brown wire is your signal wire to basically give command when the fuel pump should be on. To run underneath here. Here's your brown wire, that's going to be your signal wire. This orange wire is going to go directly through this grommet here. And we're going to have a power and a negative on this sending unit thing. And the negative will be my hob switch wire. So that will be my negative. The orange one will be connecting to the positive terminal that I'm going to make right here. The secondary fuel pump will not work until this grounds out from the hob switch. I'm going to show you up close the upgrade for the fuel pumps. Here's my setup. These are from Precision Raceworks. I paid like $108 after shipping for these pieces and that piece. The way this works is it connects directly onto the top of the outlet of the fuel pump. And see, it's got an O-ring down in there. So that sits on top. And then this piece retains against this to make it go in there. So you just slide that directly underneath that little area, and it will use that as an area to compress the fitting on, and it seals the O-ring right at the top. I think I paid $30 a piece for these, so that was like $60. I paid $50 for these. The purpose of these is you want to drill through the top of this piece here over here. I'm planning to also add JB Weld in there just to make sure that it's got a good seal. They include a drill bit too. This area, when it goes in there, I guess it's supposed to seal against the nylon washers to prevent the gas fumes from escaping the gas tank. This is the dual Walbro 450s. For these, I had to drill that out. I had to heat it up with a heat gun and press these inserts in. Make those flush, so I'll trim them up. Mark that positive and negative. 2 pumps are in here, but I need to zip tie those so they don't go anywhere, but they don't really move all that much anyway. I had to cut this area right here, the plastic piece, to fit that other fuel pump. And I cut a lot inside of the tank, or inside this bucket. I cut the bottom just a little bit so I have a little bit more space for these socks to go out through the bottom. I double nutted this because I wanted to make sure it was held secure to this top piece here, the plastic piece. This is what it looks like completed. I also need to just go ahead and mark that one before I forget about it. This is negative and that's positive. I decided to put the secondary pump on right here, and this is the primary pump. The reason being is this will sit inside the tank like this. The primary pump will be closer to the bottom of the fuel tank. The secondary pump is going to be a little bit higher. Purpose of that secondary pump will not be used unless I'm reaching 15 psi. Therefore, I need to make sure that I have enough fuel in the tank if I'm running it hard, because otherwise the secondary pump may not get fuel if I'm running it really close to empty. If I put the primary pump in the other position, it's possible not be able to get the last bit of fuel that's in the tank. It's the main reason. So I'd run out of fuel possibly before the gauge even hits empty.